everyone. This is News Reporter Jack reporting to you live from Harlem with the news. And today I want you to know that we're going to change everything. That's what's going to happen today. We're going to learn about how everything changed because of, what is that? The Harlem Renaissance. What is that? And maybe it's a painting or something like that. I'm not too sure. But we're going to find out that today the Harlem Renaissance changed everything. And it's here in Harlem, New York, right where I'm reporting from. Oh, it's so lovely. I think that everyone here should be excited. Are you excited? I'm excited. I'm sorry. Let's find out. There's a special visitor and Children's Church today to talk about the Harlem Renaissance. Well, hello everybody, I'm sorry. This is Youth Pastor Emmanuel, and today we have a special guest here in Children's Church that's going to talk to us about the Harlem Renaissance. And we're only 2 weeks away from Juneteenth, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring a special guest in to talk about the Harlem Renaissance. Now, today's Bible verse is Matthew 9, chapter 9, verse 17. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the wineskins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and they are both preserved. In other words, they're kept well. So, now, we're going to talk about something new because African Americans experienced something new and the United States experienced something new with the Harlem Renaissance. Jesus teaches us about his movement that it cannot fit into the old system. In other words, Christianity was a new revelation and movement of God that would reach out to different people all over the world. After the long ordeal of slavery, African Americans emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. Despite the racist laws, African Americans carved out a new life for themselves in Harlem, New York. The old wineskins represented the old way, which had faded away. The old wineskins could not fit into the new wineskins because the old wineskins were dried up. So the new wine could not fit into the old wineskins. That's very, very important. Hope that you understand that. And when I say new wine, that's something that's very new. And if you put it into the old wineskins, it would break apart. So a lot of people left the South to escape the Jim Crow laws, and they escaped all of the lynchings and everything, and they came north hoping to find new jobs, a great education, but I'm going to let our guest talk about that. Now, our guest is, you guessed it, it's your school teacher, Mr. Antonio, who's going to talk about the Harlem Renaissance. It actually fits into our Sunday school lesson, well, not a Sunday school, but our church school lesson for today. So, without any further ado, let's welcome your school teacher, Mr. Antonio.
Hey, wait a minute. I come to Children's Church. They escaped from school. I can't believe this. Oh, my gracious. School all over again. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
I can't believe that, Calvin. So you come to church to escape from school. I thought it was another reason that you came to church for. Okay, Calvin, that's okay. I'm going to remember that. Now, I want to talk to you about the Harlem Renaissance because it's very important. And as we approach Juneteenth, it's important that you understand everything. Now, the Harlem Renaissance was an intellectual and cultural movement of African American music, dance, art, fashion, literature, theater, politics, and scholarship centered in Harlem, Manhattan, New York City, spanning the 1920s and 30s. At the time, it was known as the New Negro Movement, named after the New Negro, a 1925 anthology edited by a philosopher by the name of Alvin Locke, who was regarded as the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. The movement included new African American cultural expressions. It also expanded into various urban areas. The Harlem Renaissance did, believe it or not. Like I said, it's going to take over everything. And it expanded to new areas in the northeastern cities and also midwestern cities. They were affected by the new Harlem Renaissance movement. And this was also one of the areas, because of the Harlem Renaissance, it also was one of the center places of the civil rights movement. Now, this happened because of the Great Migration. We talked about it in school, where millions of African Americans migrated from the South, the southern United States, to escape Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and other things. And they came to the North to find employment, housing, and to start a brand new life. Now, I just want you to know that there's another gentleman by the name of Aaron Douglas. He also came to Harlem, but he represented a lot of other people that came to Harlem too. Now, they had many people called Francophone, and they were black writers from Africa, the Caribbean colonies, who lived in Paris, France, and they were influenced by the Harlem Renaissance. Also seen as a significant migration, the Harlem Renaissance saw a significant migration of Africans or black people from Great Britain or England, and also France, and like I said, other Caribbean islands. Now, they consider this to be the zenith of the flowering of Negro literature. Yeah, in other words, Negro literature became very, very popular. That's what they called it at that time. And one of the most famous writers was James Weldon Johnson. He described the Harlem Renaissance that took place in approximately 1924. He called it an opportunity, a journey of a Negro life, and he also hosted a party back in 1929 to help African American writers, and there were several white publishers that were there. And this also, the year was the year of the stock market crash and the beginning of the Great Depression. And Harlem Renaissance is also considered to be a creative crucible for African Americans in art making and institutionalization. Oh, you have a question, Shaniqua? What's your question? Let's find out what Shaniqua has to say.
Okay, I have a question. My question is, now, the Harlem Renaissance, how did that change everything? That's what we're talking about today.
Okay, those are good questions. I wanted to let you know that the Harlem Renaissance is considered to have been a creative crucible for African American art making and the institutionalization, sorry about that, within a white-dominated museums and cultural institutions. During the early 20th century, Harlem was a destination for migrants from around the country, attracting both from the South seeking work and an educated class who made the area the center of culture as well as a growing Negro middle class. These people were looking for a fresh start in life, and we said that before, and this way it was a good place to go, and that was Harlem, New York. The district had been originally developed in the 19th century as an exclusive suburb for white middle class and upper middle classes. Its affluence beginning led to the development of stately houses, grand avenues, and world-class amenities such as the Polo Grounds and the Harlem Opera House. During the enormous influx of European immigrants in the late 19th century, the once exclusive district was abandoned by the white middle class, and they moved further north. Harlem became an African American neighborhood in the early 1900s. By 1910, a large block of 135th Street and 5th Avenue was bought by various African American realtors and a church group, and many more African Americans arrived during the First World War. Due to the war, the migration of laborers from Europe virtually ceased, while the war effort resulted in a massive demand for unskilled industrial laborers. The Great Migration brought hundreds of thousands of African Americans to the cities such as Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Washington, D.C., and above all, New York City. Christianity played a large role in the Harlem Renaissance. Many of the writers and social critics discussed the role of Christianity in African American lives. For example, a famous poem by Langston Hughes, Madam and the Minister, reflect the temperature and mood towards religion and the Harlem Renaissance. The cover story of the Crisis magazine publication in 1936 explains how important Christianity was regarding the process or proposed union of... Oh, you have a question? Okay, I'll get my thought out here. Anyway, Christianity, the writing, it was regarding the proposed union of three large Methodist churches in 1936. Now remember, I said the Crisis magazine publication in May 36 explains how important Christianity was regarding the proposed union of three large Methodist churches of 1936. Now, what's the question? I think you have a question, Calvin?
Okay, I have a question. Look, what's the Crisis? What's the Crisis magazine? Why is everybody looking at me? You act like I should know what that is. What?
Okay, that's a good question, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. This article was about the largest Methodist churches. They were actually beginning to merge, and this article shows the controversial question of unification of these churches. The article, the Catholic Church and the Negro priests, also published in the Crisis, January 1920, demonstrates the obstacles that African American priests face in the Catholic Church. The article confronts what was seen as the policies based on race that excluded African Americans from higher positions in the church. The Harlem Renaissance, is unusual among literary and artistic movements, for it had a close relationship to civil rights and reform organizations. Crucial to the movement, and here's where I'm going to answer your question. The Crisis magazine that I had mentioned was published by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. Another thing was called The Opportunity, that was published by the National Urban League. And The Messenger, a socialist journal, was eventually connected with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, a black labor union, and the Negro World was something called the Negro World, was a newspaper by Marcus Garvey, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Also played a role, but a few of the major authors and artists influenced with Garvey's Back to Africa movement, even if they contributed to the paper. Okay, you see, so Marcus, remember Marcus Garvey? There's a park named after him. Okay, I know you would know about that, Calvin, and Shaniqua, and Greg, because you guys play basketball at that park quite a bit. And we go to that park, because that's located in Harlem. And it was named after Marcus Garvey. Now, the Renaissance had many sources. There were many sources of there in black culture, primarily in the United States and the Caribbean, and manifested itself well beyond Harlem, as it was seen as a symbolic capital. That's what Harlem was. Harlem was a catalyst of artistic expression and highly popular nightlife destinations. There was a lot of nightclubs and everything. Its location and communications, a capital of North America, helped give the new Negro movement visibility and opportunities for publications not evident anywhere else. Located just north of Harlem was Central Park. Harlem was formerly, like I said, a white district that by the early 1920s became an African American district. Okay, wait. It looks like Adela Ray has a question. What happened to Calvin?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems like Harlem was very popular, and it also appears to me that Harlem was a place that everybody wanted to go to. That's really special. I didn't know that about Harlem, New York. Wow! Oh, and Calvin, he'll be right back. Just wanted to let you know.
Well, okay, you just wanted to give a comment. That's all right. Well, other barrios of New York City were also home to people who identified with the Harlem Renaissance. But they often crossed paths in Harlem, and they went to special events. While, for example, the 135th Street branch of the New York City Library, a lot of black intellectuals met there. And they came from places like Washington, D.C., Baltimore City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and other cities throughout the United States. Harlem was known as an intellectual location, and they had these intellectual circles. And theater was there, they had reading groups, and they all met in Harlem, or some people, they actually settled in Harlem because they liked the culture. New York City had become an extraordinarily diverse, and it was also the center of African American social world, in which no other group would actually monopolize that cultural authority. As a result of the Harlem Renaissance, it was particularly fertile ground for cultural experimentation. And what that means is that people would do various things, and that's where they learned about the civil rights movement came out of that. Well, several civil rights organizations, but Harlem was the epicenter of the new Negro movement and the growing Negro middle class, and it had a strong African American economy too. I'm going to turn the rest of this over to Youth Pastor Emmanuel. Thank you, Mr. Antonio, for everything you had stated to us. You see, the Harlem Renaissance was a new movement, and this new movement came to everybody, and people came from all over the place to live in Harlem, New York. And what I want you to learn from all this is, just like Jesus said, this was new wine being poured into new wineskins. And here's what happened with the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance began to spread all over the world, and people began to see how great the African American culture was. And the Harlem Renaissance had jazz and other things that came out of the Harlem Renaissance, which influenced the world. And more importantly, it began to change the United States. People began to look at African Americans differently because they began to see how they could contribute to culture. And remember the reading clubs and everything that they had? African Americans began to expand their intellectual interests, and they actually began to do other things. So it was great, and this Harlem was a great place, and it still is. So with that, I want to say that just like with Jesus' movement, where the old wine could no longer be poured into the new wineskins, I want you to understand that, well, I got that wrong, didn't I? I hope you caught that. Now, it's the new wine can't be poured into old wineskins. I was just seeing if you guys were paying attention. I hope so. But just remember the Harlem Renaissance, it was new wine. And people began to learn, and people began to grow, and it was a brand new step in the future, and a growing African American middle class took place. And thanks to the Harlem Renaissance and the people we learned about today, this is a part of the African American journey.